On the morning the waiting window expired, Huxley Sorn walked to the eastern edge of the camp, alone, and stood looking at the interior for the length of 100 breaths, and then he turned around and went back to the war. His people watched him do it and did not ask. They had learned the shape of the commander's mornings these past weeks, the walk east, the stillness, the turn, without knowing what it was. It was this: 27 days ago, Sorn had sent the best soldier he ever commanded into the dead lands alone to find the truth of the thing organizing the dead. Her name was Sybil. She was his closest friend, and the one person alive the dead could not sense, and her signals had stopped on day 13, and she had made him swear at the tree line that if she went silent, he would wait the full window before deciding anything. And above all, that he would never, ever come in after her, because any living rescuer was a torch the dead would sense for miles, one that would kill the rescuer and her both. Today the window closed, 27 days. The promise was kept, and its keeping had cost him more than any wound of his career, and the arithmetic now offered him exactly 2 readings. She was dead, or she was alive in a country at war and unable to reach a drop. The commander in him knew which way the numbers leaned. The rest of him chose the other reading, flatly, as an act of will, and closed the ledger. He was allowed that. He had decided sometime in the sleepless arithmetic of the past week that a man who kept every hard promise was allowed one soft belief, and his was this: Sybil was alive. He would hold this ground until the contract's end, because holding it was still the only thing he could do for her. And then this was the new thing, the thing that had settled in him overnight, quiet and permanent as bedrock. Then he was going to find her, however long it took, whatever it required. The arithmetic that forbade a rescue was built on the world as it stood, and Huxley Sorn intended to spend whatever years it took to change the arithmetic. He did not know yet that the interior was about to give him one last chance to lose everything first. The scouts brought it in at midday, and it was not a report so much as a countdown. Movement all along the tree line, Commander. His Lieutenant Halloran laid the sketch on the map table, and her voice was the flat kind she used for the worst things. Both scouts agree. It's not massing at one point like last time, it's massing at every point, the whole eastern arc, and there are living men with them, engineers' wagons, ladder lengths, ram timber. They cut trees all morning. Sorn looked at the sketch and saw the season's whole story arrive at its last page. The great assault 3 weeks ago had been the interior testing whether the site could be taken by weight. It could not. So the hand out there had done what competent hands do: learned, resourced, and returned to finish it properly. Ladders for the earthworks, rams for the gates. Living engineers to solve the problems dead muscle could not. An army with a toolkit, coming to erase the coast's foothold at the edge of the dead lands, and no more probes, no more lessons. This was the eraser. Timeline, Sorn said. Tonight they won't give us daylight. No, they won't. He was calm, and it was real calm, and he noted the realness of it with something like gratitude, because the tightness of the silent weeks, the overgripped commands Halloran had once called him out for, had burned off sometime in the last days, leaving only the work. There was nothing left to grip. The window was closed, the belief was chosen, and the whole remaining world had simplified into one night and one line. All right, they've spent 3 weeks planning how to take this ground. Let's show them the flaw in the plan. Which is what, Commander? That we spent 3 weeks too. They came an hour after full dark, and they came the way he had told his officers they would, everywhere at once. The whole eastern arc lit with the assault, the dead in ranks against the earthworks, ladder teams behind them, the deep boom of ram timber at the north gate, and behind it all the hand, orchestrating, spending bodies like a man spending water. No feints tonight. Every attack was real. The plan was as simple as the hand could make it. Stretch the compacts 200 across a mile of perimeter until somewhere, anywhere, the line went thin enough to break, and pour the interior through the gap. Sorn stood at the center of his prepared answer, and let the first hour teach the enemy nothing but pain. The compact's answer was the thing he had built in 3 weeks of nights. Not a stronger wall, walls could be stretched, but a moving reserve, 3 picked squads under his fastest officers, drilled to collapse on any bending point at a dead run, kill the breach, and be gone before the hand could exploit their absence elsewhere. The line was allowed to bend. Bending was in the plan. Wherever it bent, the reserve arrived like a hammer falling out of the dark, and the bend became a killing ground, and the reserve was already running somewhere else. He spent the first hours above the fight, reading it whole, calling the hammer. Latter teams took the southeast wall and died on the inner side of it. In the trap yard the compact had built behind the weakest-looking stretch, a false weakness offered on purpose, paid for in advance. The ram broke the north gate and found the second gate behind it, and the killing pocket between the two, and the pocket did its arithmetic all night. A commander fights the battle in front of him, Sorn had told his officers. We are going to fight the battle we rehearsed instead, and make them attend it. But numbers are their own kind of hand, and past midnight the numbers began to tell. The breach came at the join of the east and south faces, the seam, always the seam, an hour past midnight, and this time it was not a probe that found it but the full weight of the assault, and the seam did not bend. It broke. A ram team the scouts had not counted, held back all night for exactly this, hit the seam at its exhausted worst, and the palisade came down across 10 feet, and the dead poured at the gap with the ladder borne behind them, and the moving reserve was committed at the north gate and could not be two places. And for the first time all season the interior was inside Sorn's wall in strength. Sorn met it himself. He was closest and he was the reserve now, and he went into the gap with his headquarters squad, 8 veterans and the commander, and for the next span of time there was no battle to read, only the fight in front of him, which he had not permitted himself in 20 years of command, and which the night now demanded. A dead thing came through the broken palisade, and he took its head. A living soldier of the interior came behind it with a boarding axe, and Sorn killed him in 2 moves, no waste, and stepped into the gap itself. With me, hold the breach, the 8 formed on him. The gap was 10 feet, and the night poured into it, and the 9 of them stood in it and did not move. It was the hardest fighting of Huxley Sorn's life, and somewhere in the middle of it, bleeding from the scalp and the forearm, holding 10 feet of broken wall against the weight of a country, he found the thing the whole season had been taking from him. There was nothing in the world but the breach. Not the silence from the interior, not the closed window, not the arithmetic of a life he could not save, the breach, the next dead thing through it, the man on his left, the man on his right. The fear that had lived inside him for 27 days had no purchase here, because fear needs a future to feed on, and the breach had no future in it, only the present tense, blade wide. He would remember it afterward almost with guilt, that the worst hour of the worst night of the war was the first hour in a month in which he had felt entirely like himself. They held the breach for the time it took Halloran to strip the trap yard and bring 40. Then the 40 arrived, and the breach became a door that opened one way, and the interior stopped coming through it. And somewhere out in the dark, the hand did its own arithmetic and reached its own conclusion, and near dawn the whole assault let go of the sight at once. The ranks dissolving, the engineers' fires abandoned, the army becoming drift and draining east, leaving the ground before the walls carpeted with the price of the lesson. The sight had held, again, finally, completely. The cost came in with the daylight. 9 of the compact dead, 31 wounded, the north gate matchwood, the seam a scar. Against it, the largest force the interior had ever committed on the coast, broken on a mile of prepared ground, its engineers dead or fled, its siege stores burning in the morning light where Halloran's riders had reached them. Lyra Aldenmuir's gamble stood. The seedling stood. The coast's foothold at the edge of the dead land stood, and everything the interior had spent to erase it was smoke. Sorn buried his 9 and wrote 9 letters in his own hand, and stood before the assembled compact in the noon light with his arm bound and his voice level, and gave them the truth, which was his only speech-making. The interior came to prove this ground couldn't be held, Sorn said. You are standing on the proof of what it cost them to be wrong. No unit on this coast has ever done what you did last night. I have commanded you for 20 years, and I have never been prouder, and I will never forget the 9, and neither will you. He let that stand for a breath. Rest, rebuild the gate. We hold this ground until the contract ends, and we hold it like what we now know we are. which is the finest fighting force this coast has ever seen. Dismissed. It was the martial high point of the Iron Compact's history, and Sorn meant every word of it, and he carried it the way he now carried everything, with one hand, because the other was already reaching for the thing that came next. That evening he stood at the eastern edge of the camp again, the 100-breath stillness, the interior going dark in front of him. Halloran found him there. She stood beside him a while in the way of an officer who has earned silence with her commander, and then she said quietly, "The window closed yesterday. That's what the mornings are. I've watched you keep a promise for 27 days, Commander. I don't know to who. I know what it's cost." "You told me once I was holding too tight," Sorn said. "You were right. I've let go of everything I can let go of." He watched the dark line of the trees. "There's one thing I'm not going to let go of, Halloran, not ever. When this contract ends, I'm going to go find someone. It may take me years to learn how. The whole arithmetic of the world says it can't be done. I held the wall all season because it was the only thing I could do for her." He said her finally out loud to another living soul, and the word cost him nothing at all, which was how he knew the resolve had finished setting. The wall held, so now I'm going to go change the arithmetic. Halloran was quiet a moment. "The compact goes where you go, Commander. It always has. When you work out where that is, we'll be there." She left him with it. And Huxley Sorn stood at the edge of the living world in the last light, victorious, decorated in everything but the one thing he wanted, and looked east into the country that had taken his best friend and given back 27 days of silence, and made it a promise instead of a fear, which was the entire distance he had traveled this season, and it was enough to build on. "Hold on," he said to the interior to her, wherever in it she was. "Wherever they have you, whatever it takes, I'm coming."